What's up, everybody? BigSweetC here with you. Got a special little video for you today. Today I am talking about some more Fallout talk. So if you don't know, we've been live streaming. I've been going back and retro playing a new playthrough of Fallout New Vegas. We've been doing the House Always Wins quests, and I think that's what we're going to continue with. We're going to help Mr. House finish up and take over New Vegas with his monstrous robotos. So if you want to check that out, be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell. That way you know when I do go live on Sundays with that continuation. So look forward to that. Speaking of, I kind of want to speak on this conversation that I was having with you guys earlier about this during the streams, and that's going back and having replayed this. It does have me questioning whether I truly believe New Vegas is a better game than Fallout 3. I know most of you guys tended to agree with me when I said I do think Fallout New Vegas is probably the best of the 3 Bethesda Fallout games. I know New Vegas is technically Obsidian, but it was the creative rights were owned by Bethesda at the time. It was published by Bethesda, I think. I'm pretty sure. So that's what we'll call it, but we can't forget that there were 3 games before this, so I can't just say it the best of any Fallout game, because the previous 2, at least, I think tactics might have been different, but at least 1 and 2 were a totally different game than 3 New Vegas and now 4 and 76. So right off the bat, we can probably pretty much assume that Fallout 76 is the worst one. I think we're all in agreement with that. And then I tend to say that Fallout 4 is actually probably the best molded one, the most fun to play, because it gives you all of the collective options that were incorporated into all of the Fallout games, with the main quests, the side quests, the settlement building, that kind of thing. So it's just the most fun to play because it's the most all around in terms of like what you get for the game itself. And now, I'm not saying that it's the best one. I don't think it is. I think one of the best ones is definitely either Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, and that's what I want to focus this conversation on, because when we were talking about it during the live stream, I definitely said that I liked New Vegas better. But having gone back and replayed it again after having not played it for a little bit and trying to think about it, I don't really know if I agree with that anymore. And so it's an interesting concept, because they are very similar games in certain aspects. It's about a random individual who has no idea who they are, really, waking up one day and being thrust into this crazy world that the player doesn't really know anything about. And so in Fallout 3, you're an 18-year-old kid who wakes up only to find out that their father has, for whatever reason, pieced out of the vault, and he's caused a bunch of chaos trying to get out, and now you have to go find him. On your way to find him, you get caught up in this journey over whether the world's most important natural resource, water, should be a public commodity or a privately owned business, and depending on who you side with is how that plays out. So that gives it kind of a unique experience, because one, it's like you, right? You're an 18-year-old kid, you're fresh, you don't know anything, level 1. You're being thrust out from what we know as high school into the real world. Some people go to college, some people go to to the workforce, that type of thing. And you kind of discover who you are through your father's footsteps, and then on into the great wide great unknown, if you will. And depending on what kind of character you choose to be, you have a different story each time you play it. Whereas New Vegas, you're this courier. Now you don't know anything about your past, because you start the game getting shot in the head by this random guy, and then you end up waking up and being taken care of by this crazy, this random doctor and this crazy on the loose robot. And it's a complete revenge story where you're like searching down the guys who decided to shoot you in the head, only to be led into this kind of combat zone where you have 2 incredibly different factions vying for control of this area, and yet this area kind of wanting to be its own unique independent ideology. And so, you know, you kind of have similarities in the fact that like you can really feel for the character. It's definitely you as in the player. You know, the first one, Fallout 3, I'm assuming is probably going to be most people's first delve in with the Fallout series. It was for me. So now I'm a 18-year-old kid. I don't know anything about myself. I don't know anything about this world, and I get thrust into it, and I kind of have to learn my way. Well, they take it to the next step in Fallout New Vegas. They treat you like you've already been there, and you kind of know how to survive in the wasteland, and they pick it up from there. So they treat it a little bit more adult in New Vegas than they do in Fallout 3. But in the end, Fallout 3 is mostly about not so much the revenge on the guy who shot you, but the ideology. Do you want the NCR to control it? Do you want Kaiser's Legion to control it? Do you want it to be an independent nation, if you will? And that's a pretty good predicament to be in, but it also doesn't have, in my opinion, as much moral ambiguity as, say, the other. Because, in my opinion, I'm assuming probably 80 to 85% of people who first play New Vegas choose one of the two independent Vegas endings, whether it be through Mr. House taking control or you teaming up with Yes Man and removing Mr. House to still have an independent Vegas. You know, I'm assuming that most people don't want to be under NCR or Kaiser's Legion control. One, because NCR is back from the old days, and it's not Brotherhood of Steel or Enclave from Fallout 3, so it's probably not as well known what their whole mission is. And Kaiser's Legion is a bunch of slave owners. I can understand why people wouldn't want to. I mean, I'm sure there was probably a bigger chunk than I would like to admit that decided to go with Kaiser's Legion. I mean, we went with Caesar's Legion in our first playthrough just because I had never done it before. But it's not that I didn't feel remorse for helping those clowns. But I digress. Whereas, Three's got a very ambiguous story. So the battle is over water, basically. And your father has figured out a way to clean the water of all the radiation, and it's going to help life grow exponentially for the next, quarter century or however long humanity makes it now that they have clean water again. The other option is to side with that's your father's side. That's the Brotherhood of Steel side. The other side is to side with the Enclave, which is, hey, natural selection decides who should and should not get the water, and the way we judge that is through currency. So they want to privatize the water and sell it off to the people who can afford it, because divine intervention, i.e. the Great War that ended all life, that was God's way of naturally selecting who should and should not continue humanity. And you decide that through financial success. If you have a lot of money, then you've been chosen by God, you deserve to live. Now, the reason I'm saying that has, a little bit more ambiguity is because it does. Like, there's still a significant number of people that believe in divine intervention. Now, whether it's because of money or whatever, there's still a lot of very, this is a sign of the times type thing. You see it a lot with climate science. So, a vast majority of scientists believe in one specific thing. There's a small fraction of people that don't, and they use divine intervention to help make that a bigger mouthpiece than not. So, these scientists who deny science are then spouted out by these divine interventionists, and people want to naturally believe that they've been chosen by God to be, the carriers of humanity. And so you kind of have that, shoot, do I defy God, or do I do what I think is right? There's this moral ambiguity. and so it makes it a much harder choice in my opinion, because water is so important. And if you let one company, two companies, three companies dictate who gets what and how they get it, then they're going to have say on who lives, who dies, and who gets what, and so forth and so on. We see that right now, nowadays. Big tech companies like Google, that owns half the internet. 80% of all Google search, or all see, there I go, Freudian slip. 80% of all questioned searches, if you will, are done on the Google internet search engine. Very little are done on Bing. Very little are done on Yahoo anymore. Very little are done on DuckDuckGo. So everything you are looking for is going through one company. They're going to be able to dictate what you find on which search, when, and all this information. And whether you think that should be free and open to everybody, or whether you think that should be dictated by Google, is, still a question up in the air. A lot of people like the idea of tech companies censoring quote unquote fake news on the internet. Well, what is and what is not fake news? Fox doesn't particularly tell you the truth all the time, but they're still on TV. They're the number one watched news company in the world right now, so that makes them legitimate.
Are you a soldier or a scientist?
Are they fake news? Who gets to decide? How do they get to decide? Just because they can afford to stay on the air? Does that make them? Should they be allowed to stay on air because of that? These are all kind of everyday conversations that we're having, whereas we don't really talk about so much the ideology of our government. We just kind of assume that America is an independent country, and we're independently free to do as we please. But it's not really that way. You have the NCR, which could represent the Democratic Party of Kaiser's Legion, which could represent the Republican Party. You have these two major ideologies fighting for control back and forth, and then you have some people that are like, no, we shouldn't be controlled by either one. But that's not something that we really talk about. Every 4 years, we go in and we vote for a Democrat or a Republican. So it doesn't have that moral ambiguity that Fallout 3 does. And now there are generally gameplay aspects of it that I like a lot better. For instance, the fact that they added weight to ammunition is fantastic, I think. The fact that they added, creating food and the survival statistic, I think is fantastic. It's definitely a more immersive game than the first one. I think the DLC is a little bit better. The DLC, you got Dead Money, which is probably my favorite. It's an old take off an old movie where you're robbing a casino. The Monte Carlo, I think, is what they rob in the actual movie. Sierra Madre is the one they do in the game. But then you also have shoot, I can't remember the name of the actual DLC, but it's the story of Courier 6. One of the other guys that was tasked with getting that platinum chip for Mr. House. So there's really good DLC, but like I remember the first time I played the DLC, when you go on to, I think it's Point Lookout, you go onto the island and you go through that whole thing where the dude, spoiler alert, takes out a piece of your brain and you're having this like hallucination. Like the first time I played that was incredible. Now shoot, the Whatever of Steel one that raised your level cap and everything for the first game was pretty good too. But maybe I'll give the DLC to New Vegas. The modification of the guns and stuff like that I think is very cool. So there were some gameplay tweaks, but you get that because it's a sequel. You already have the baseline Fallout 3. Now you just got to add to it. So you're not really, it's not really creating more. You're just creating extra, if that makes sense. Now I do think it runs a little bit better, looks a little bit better. But again, that's all part of being the sequel. So I leave the question up to the community. Which is truly better, New Vegas or Fallout 3? during this little 15-minute conversation, I tended to lean a little towards Fallout 3 being better, but you know, I'm still gonna stick with I generally enjoy Fallout New Vegas better because it treats you as an adult. That gives it a step up, in my opinion. But the beauty of Fallout 3 is the fact that you don't know. It's probably your first foray into a Fallout game. It was for me. Now, I'm sure it's not that way for everybody because, like I said, there was at least 2 or 3, 1 and 2, and then Tactics, I believe, Brotherhood Tactics before that. So if you knew anything about those games, then obviously this wasn't your first foray, and you probably, you know, were ready for New Vegas before Fallout 3. But, you know, I think I've generally talked myself into it doesn't really matter. they're both, in my opinion, great games, and I would like to see Bethesda go back up as opposed to down like they are now with Fallout 76. Although Steel Dawn should be good, is what I heard. But we'll have to check that out at some other time. But I'm generally curious what you guys think. So be sure to hit that like button, that notification bell, that sub button. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. Is New Vegas better than 3? Is 3 better than New Vegas? I'm still pretty undecided, to be honest with you. And tell me why you think. Maybe your argument can win the argument for me. So either way, that's going to do it for this one. BigSweetC, that's me, wishing YouTube, that's you, wonderful day, night, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it might be. As long as you're watching, I'm wishing you a wonderful watching time. Sweetness. Signing off. Peace.